Fairy lights in my aunt's backyard were the kind that are supposed to make everything feel magical. They just made it easier to see everyone's faces when my mother announced that I would be paying for my brother's wedding venue, $54,000. From my savings account, as a gift. The table went quiet for exactly 1 second. Then everyone laughed, clinked their glasses, and started talking about catering. I didn't laugh, I said no. And that one word, that single syllable I had been swallowing for 29 years, split my family in half. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Sasha. I'm 30 years old. I grew up in a semi-detached house in Mississauga, the kind of neighborhood where everyone has the same driveway and different opinions about who works harder. My parents came from Ukraine in the 90s with 2 suitcases and a very specific idea of what a good daughter looks like. A good daughter is quiet. A good daughter is grateful. A good daughter does not ask why. My father, Bodon, worked in logistics. He still does. He is not a cruel man. That he is a man who believes that family is a single organism, that what one person earns belongs to all of them, that sacrifice is love, and love is sacrifice, and they are the same thing, and there is no discussion. He never raised his voice. He didn't have to. His disappointment was loud enough. My mother, Helena, was the one who managed the image. She was warm in public, the kind of woman who brought pierogies to the neighbors, and remembered every birthday and hugged you a little too long at church. At home, she was a different frequency. Not cold exactly, more like permanently dissatisfied. There was always something I hadn't done right. My hair, my posture, my portion size, my tone of voice. She delivered these corrections gently, wrapped in concern. I'm only saying this because I love you. You know I only want the best for you. I know. My brother Kosti was 26 and getting married to a woman named Britt, who wore linen and owned a diffuser collection. He had moved back home after a stint in Calgary that hadn't worked out. He was charming and lazy, and everyone found it endearing. When Kosti forgot to pay rent, my parents called it a rough patch. When I missed a single-family dinner because I had a deadline at work, my mother called it a character concern. I had been working as a project coordinator at a mid-sized construction firm in downtown Toronto for 4 years. I was good at my job. I saved aggressively. I had an emergency fund, a TFSA, and a down payment fund that I had been building since I was 25. I did not talk about money with my family, because the one time I mentioned my savings account, my father nodded slowly and said, "Good. That's good. You'll be able to help your brother when he needs it." That was 3 years before the engagement. I had a 1-bedroom apartment on the Danforth. I paid for it myself. My parents referred to it as the place Sasha's staying for now, as though it were temporary, as though adulthood were a waiting room. I want you to understand something about growing up in a family like mine. The control is never loud. Nobody slams their fist on the table and declares themselves the ruler. It's softer than that, more atmospheric. It's the way guilt fills a room before anyone says a word. It's the way love and obligation get spoken in the same breath until you can't separate them. You do things not because you're afraid of punishment, but because you cannot stand the weight of their disappointment. You make yourself small and serviceable and useful because that is the condition under which you are loved. I had been doing that for 29 years. I was very tired. I didn't yell. I just stood there in my kitchen, holding my daughter's hand. A yard, folding tables. My aunt's cooking, which is extraordinary. My cousin had strung lights from the fence to the roof. There were maybe 30 people, family friends, a few of Britt's relatives from Barrie, neighbors from my parents' street. My mother had been strange all week, excited in a way that made me nervous. She kept texting me about the venue that Kosti and Britt had chosen, a restored barn outside of Guelph, very beautiful, very expensive, completely beyond what my brother could afford on his own. She mentioned it the way you mention something that's already been decided. They found the most incredible place. It's going to be perfect. I should have asked more questions. I didn't. At the dinner, I was sitting near the end of the table, talking to my cousin about her dog. The wine was good, the food was better, and for about 40 minutes, I let myself just exist without waiting for something to go wrong. Then my father stood up. He tapped his glass. He made a small speech about family and sacrifice and the importance of roots. He talked about how proud he was of Kosti. He said that a wedding is not just a celebration, it is a statement, a declaration of who you are as a family. Then he turned to me. He was smiling. And your sister, he said in the spirit of family, has generously agreed to contribute the venue deposit, $54,000 from her savings, as a gift to her brother and his future wife. People clapped. Someone said awe. Britt pressed her hand to her heart. My mother was beaming. I had not agreed to this. I had never been asked. I felt it in my chest first. That particular cold that comes not from shock, but from recognition. I had always known this moment was coming. I just hadn't known it would be announced at a dinner party, like a done deal. My father was still looking at me. Everyone was. Kosti raised his glass in my direction with a grin that was so comfortable, so certain, that it made my stomach drop. He already knew. He'd known before I did. I set down my fork. My voice came out steady, which surprised me. That's not something I agreed to, I said. The table didn't go silent all at once. It happened in a wave, starting at our end and moving outward. My mother's smile went rigid. Sasha. Her voice was soft and dangerous. Not in front of everyone. I'm not the one who announced it in front of everyone. I'm not the one who announced it in front of everyone, I said. My father's expression shifted, not to anger, to something harder. Calculation. Sasha, he said, we discussed this. We didn't, I said. You decided it. There's a difference. Kosti leaned back in his chair like he was watching a hockey game he expected us to lose. Sash, come on, he said. It's not a big deal. It's $54,000, I said. It's my savings. It's 4 years of my life. You can save again, my mother said quickly. You're young. You have a good job. It's just money, said to me. About mine. I pushed my chair back. My mother hissed. Do not walk away from this table. I'm not walking away, I said. I'm just not signing anything. My father's voice dropped to the register he used when things were final. You are part of this family. This family takes care of each other. We took care of you. Now you take care of your brother. You took care of you. Now you take care of your brother. You took care of me, I said. That's what parents do. That's not a debt. The silence after that was the loudest thing I've ever heard. I left the backyard. I walked around the side of the house to the front, stood on my aunt's lawn in the dark, and tried to breathe. My hands were shaking. My face was hot. I felt like I had just put something I could never take back out into the air, and I didn't know yet if that was a relief or a catastrophe. My mother came around the corner 2 minutes later. She was not beaming anymore. You embarrassed this family, she said. You embarrassed me, I said. In front of 30 people. This is about more than you, she said. This is about Kosti's future. This is about what kind of sister you are. That landed where she meant it to. But it didn't hit the way it used to. I don't have anything else to say right now, I told her. I'm going home. She called me selfish. She said I had always been selfish, that I had pulled away from the family ever since I moved to Toronto, that I had chosen my independence over my roots, that I did not understand what it meant to be a family. She said these things quietly, almost tenderly, the way you deliver a diagnosis. I got in my car. I drove home. I cried on the DVP, but I didn't turn around. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my apartment listening to the street noise and staring at the ceiling and thinking about money. Not the $54,000 specifically, the pattern of it. I opened my banking app. I went back through my records. Not my TFSA, not my down payment fund, but my checking account. The one my parents had been listed on as secondary holders since I was a teenager. A leftover from when I was 17 and they needed to help me open it. I had never removed them. It had never occurred to me that I needed to. I scrolled and scrolled and kept scrolling. The transfers were small. That was the thing. Small enough that I'd never noticed individually. $50 here, $200 there, $120, $300, all labeled with things that look like mine. Groceries, transit, phone. But I didn't make those transfers. I had never authorized them. Over 5 years, they had taken just over $19,000 from my account. Not all at once. Never all at once. Always just under what I might have noticed. A slow drain, an ambient theft dressed up as family. My hands were completely still when I realized it. I thought they'd shake. They didn't. There was nothing left to shake out of me. I was just cold. I took screenshots of everything. I made a folder. I exported the statements. Then I thought about who I could call. I didn't have a lawyer. I knew that I needed one. I thought through my contacts the way you do at 2 in the morning when you're trying to solve a problem that is too large and too close and too personal. I had a colleague at work, a project manager named Wendy, who had gone through a divorce 2 years earlier and had talked openly about her experience with her family law attorney. She'd mentioned more than once that the firm handled civil matters too, financial disputes. I had her number. I texted her, "I'm sorry for the hour. Something happened. Do you think I could get your lawyer's contact?" She called me back in 4 minutes. I told her a shortened version. She listened without interrupting. "I'll text you the number right now," she said. "His name is Graham. Tell him I sent you. He'll pick up." He did. I told Graham everything. The dinner, the announcement, the account, the 19,000. He asked questions that were precise and calm and didn't make me feel insane. He said he needed to see the bank statements. He said there were a few things we needed to do before anything else. He said, and this part I wrote down, "Do not transfer anything. Do not close anything. Do not contact your parents about the account. Just send me what you have." I sent it at 3:40 in the morning. At 3:42, he replied, "I'll have someone look at this first thing. Go to sleep if you can." I couldn't. But I tried. The next morning, I went to work. I sat in my office on the 22nd floor and watched Lake Ontario through the window and tried to be a normal person for 8 hours. My mother had called 4 times. My father had called twice. Costi sent a voice memo that I didn't open. At noon, Graham called. He had reviewed the statements. He said what they had done was not, technically, legal. My name was primary on the account. The transfers had been initiated from their secondary access. There was no authorization documentation. In Ontario, he said, unauthorized transfers from a joint account by a secondary holder, particularly when there is a pattern and a significant total, can constitute civil fraud. He said it carefully, the way lawyers say things when they mean them. He also said there was a secondary issue. "What?" I asked. "Your parents listed themselves as emergency contacts on 2 of your TFSA contribution records at your bank. They're not authorized to access those accounts, but the listings flagged when you missed a notification update." Graham paused. "I think they've been trying to build a path to those too." I set my phone on my desk and stared at it for a moment. "How do we stop that?" I said. He told me, "Remove them from everything that week. New contact information, updated beneficiaries, a different branch if possible." And the 19,000? He said we had options. We could send a demand letter. We could pursue civil action. He said the case was clean because the records were clean. There was no ambiguity about who transferred what and when. He also asked me something I hadn't expected. Have they ever been physically threatening? Or coercive in ways beyond financial? I thought about my mother outside my aunt's house. Her voice. The way she said selfish. The way she had stood between me and my car for a moment before stepping aside. I thought about all the years of the quiet kind of pressure. Not physically, I said, but coercive, yes. He told me about something called a no-contact instruction letter, not a restraining order, nothing that required a court filing at this stage, but a formal legal communication that put my parents on notice that I was not to be contacted, that all future communication must go through Graham's office, and that any further unauthorized financial activity would result in immediate civil action. Send it, I said. Are you sure? He asked. Once it goes out, the dynamic with your family changes permanently. It already changed, I said. They changed it. At a dinner party. He sent it that afternoon. I found out later, through Wendy, whose sister happened to know my aunt, that my mother received the letter on a Thursday morning while she was having coffee. That she read it twice, and then sat very still for a long time. That my father called a lawyer friend of his and was told, quietly, that the situation was not in his favor. That Costi, who had apparently been counting on the venue money to go through, had to call the barn in Guelph and cancel the soft hold on the date. I heard he was furious, that he blamed me, that he told his fiancé I had always been jealous of him. I let that sit with me for a day. I picked it up and looked at it and put it back down. The weeks after the letter were strange and quiet. My phone stopped ringing. The silence from my family was enormous. I had grown up inside that silence, trained to be unsettled by it, to rush in and apologize and smooth things over, just to make it stop. But I was in my own apartment. The silence there was just silence. It was the radiator clicking and the neighbor's dog and the streetcar on clean. It was mine. Graham's office sent a demand letter 2 weeks after the no-contact instruction. It outlined the $19,000, itemized by date and amount, and requested repayment within 30 days. The letter was 7 pages. I read it twice. It was the most thorough document I had ever seen someone write on my behalf. My parents hired a lawyer. Of course they did. Their lawyer sent back a letter suggesting that the transfers had been made with my knowledge, for family expenses I had agreed to contribute to. I had never agreed to anything. There was no documentation, no texts, no emails, no written acknowledgement of any kind. Graham said calmly, "Good. That makes this easier." The process took 4 months. There was no courtroom. It was negotiation, documentation, counter-documentation. My parents' lawyer eventually advised them that the paper trail was not in their favor, that the pattern of transfers was difficult to characterize as consensual, and that continuing to contest would expose them to a public civil proceeding that would be considerably more damaging than a private settlement. They settled. The full $19,000, plus Graham's fees, plus interest at the rate set out in the Ontario Courts of Justice Act. The money arrived in my account on a Tuesday. I sat with my phone in my hand and looked at the number for a long time. I want to tell you, I felt triumphant. I didn't, exactly. I felt like someone who has been holding their breath for a very long time and has finally been allowed to exhale. It's not the same thing. Triumph is loud. This was just relief. Long, slow, unspectacular relief. I called Graham to confirm receipt. He said congratulations in the tone of someone who has seen this many times and means it every time. I thanked him. He told me to update my account information and to keep the documentation archived. He said, "If anything else comes up from them, we have a very solid record now." Nothing else came up. Costi and Britt got married in the fall. A much smaller wedding than the barn. I found out through my cousin, who texted me a photo. He looked happy. I was glad for that, genuinely. I don't hate my brother. I feel something more complicated and less energetic than hate. Something closer to grief for what we might have been if our parents had raised us differently. My parents moved through a period of visible social difficulty. The demand letter had mentioned the possibility of civil proceedings, and the word had spread in the way words do in a close community. There were people at their church who knew. People who asked questions my mother didn't have comfortable answers to. The image she had spent 30 years curating developed a crack. And a crack in a facade like that tends to widen. I don't know the details of how their life looks now. I have a no-contact boundary that I maintain not because a lawyer told me to, but because it is the only arrangement under which I can be a functional, healthy person. That is something I'm still learning. That a boundary is not punishment. It's not revenge. It's just an accurate description of what I can and cannot tolerate. I changed branches at my bank. I updated every account, every beneficiary designation, every emergency contact. I set up a new TFSA contribution room projection with a financial planner. A woman named Sujin, who works out of an office near my apartment, and who explained compound growth to me in a way that made me feel like the future was something I was building rather than something that was happening to me. My down payment fund is back on track. My savings rate is higher now than it has ever been, partly because I am no longer subject to a slow ambient drain I didn't know about, and partly because anger, when you channel it correctly, is an excellent financial motivator. I still work on the Danforth. I still take the streetcar. I still have the apartment, though I'm looking at condos in Leslieville and there's one on Carla that I have toured twice. Some mornings I wake up and reach for the familiar dread, the low-grade anticipatory anxiety that had been my default state for most of my adult life, the waiting for someone to be disappointed in me, the measuring of my choices against their expectations. I reach for it, and it's not there. Or, it's there, but smaller. A reflex, without the object. I had coffee with Wendy last month. She asked how everything had resolved. I told her. She listened the way good people listen, without rushing to the part where she gives advice. At the end, she said, "I'm really glad you texted me that night." "Me too," I said. There's a word in Ukrainian, my grandmother used to say it, untranslatable the way all the good ones are. It means something like the quiet after a storm that has passed and will not return. Not peace exactly. Something more earned than peace. I don't know if what I have is that, but I'm in my apartment, and the light comes in through the kitchen window in the morning and lands on the counter in a long yellow stripe, and I make my coffee, and I sit at my table, and for the first time in my life, the silence around me belongs entirely to me. I'm not waiting for anyone's approval anymore. I'm not holding my breath. I'm just here, and that's enough.